But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 96 of The Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm James.
This is our post-US Open wrap show. We could have done it last night, which would have been Monday, but we kind of needed a personal day to just sit at home and not do anything.
Yeah, we were in Rochester at my family's house over the weekend. From Friday to Sunday, we watched both finals in the garage. Mm-hmm. Very high-tech. Managed to hook up a TV in the garage so we could socialize and watch tennis. But there was lots of eating and drinking involved, and it was just a lot. So we needed the personal day.
Your winners are Rafael Nadal, 16th Grand Slam title, and the big surprise, Miss Sloane Stevens is a Grand Slam champion.
Life comes at you fast, doesn't it?
It sure does, and it came at me real fast. And I would like to officially offer an apology to all the listeners, and to you, and to Sloane.
Uh-huh.
Because, for one, I picked Venus to win, which was looking pretty good at 4-5-30 all in that third set against Sloane.
Yeah.
However, earlier in the week, last week, I also said to you privately that I just don't see Sloane as a slam champion. You're like, well, Sloane looks pretty dangerous. And I laughed at it so preposterously. It didn't even occur to me. And of course, as it starts lining up that it's coming to be Sloane and Venus, and then the day of the match, I just had this feeling. I woke up.
You did. You texted me
right away
earlier.
Mm-hmm. I woke up, went to take the dog out, opened the door. It's pouring rain. One thing about this new place we're at, you can't tell when it's raining outside. It's like, great. I have 10 minutes to take the dog out before I have to go to work, and I have to somehow get him to do his business in torrential downpour. That did not work. Mm-hmm. And so it's like the writing is absolutely on the wall. Like, first I put my foot in my mouth, I bad-talked Sloane, and now she's going to beat Venus. And not only did she beat Venus in heartbreaking fashion.
Really? So I don't know if an apology is in order. I think just a little eating of crow would suffice. And you didn't even give me the opportunity to call you out. You just went out and admitted it.
Yeah, this was a preemptive strike.
And I think what you said was that Sloane doesn't have a Grand Slam winning game.
Yeah, and I said that she, at best, is probably a perennial quarterfinalist.
Wow.
Or semifinalist.
Not even a semifinalist.
Like, I just didn't think she had the weapons to push through and win 7 matches, let alone in this tournament.
Right.
When, fine, she's made back-to-back semifinals leading into the US Open, but she hadn't played any tennis for over a year.
Right.
Up until that point.
I would say, not a Sloane skeptic, but I saw her in that semifinal in Cincinnati, and she didn't look like she had a lot to give against Halep. She had played so much tennis over those few weeks, and she just seemed wiped out. And I thought, she's only been back for a little while. Is she going to be able to sustain in New York if it gets down to that? Especially after a long match against Venus. But she looked so fresh after every single match. And I think, of course, the day rest helps everybody. But, man, to be young again.
It was more than that for me. It was just, I just didn't think she had the game, which I was totally wrong. I thought of her more as a counterpuncher, somebody who was a retriever. I didn't know she had that much power when she needed it.
To be fair, there was a lot of counterpunching in her game.
Sure, but she does have a reserve of power if she needs it. I didn't know her game was that complete. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And from start to finish at the Open, beating Vinci, Cibulkova, Barty, Gerges, who was one of the hottest players on tour all summer, Sevastova, Venus, and then Keys in the final. That's quite the lineup.
It is. And because you have a few streaking players who've had good results lately in Barty and Gerges, you have a former Grand Slam finalist in Cibulkova and Vinci, and then you have just top-tier competition in Venus and Madison. I thought I bookmarked that third round match against Barty as something to watch. The outcome I was unsure of, and Sloane just handled it, and just continued to handle it, like she has been doing all summer.
What we witnessed in this tournament was the coming of age of Sloane Stephens. Mm-hmm. The maturing, the evolving, the evolution of Sloane Stephens. One of the things that we heard time and time again throughout the course of the 2 weeks was probably mostly from Chris Evert, but a lot of the commentators kept saying, I wish she would show more emotion on court. I wish she would be more emotive. And that's something that we noticed in person in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. That even when she wasn't playing well against Simona Halep, you couldn't really tell what was going on in the match because of her even-keeled disposition. And to be honest, I haven't paid that close of attention to Sloane throughout her career to tell if that's something that's been the case all along. But lo and behold, she's a Grand Slam champion now, and that's looked at as a positive, right? Mm-hmm. That in those tense, crazy moments of matches, she's able to keep it together and not get too flustered. So now what people were saying is something that's holding her back is now something that's propelling her forward, which just shows you perfectly how these narratives are scripted to fit personal agendas, right?
Right. Well, and how commentators like us even can misread signals based on what we want to see or what we think we see. And in tennis commentary, the actors are so conflicted on a professional level that they're seeing exactly what they want to see. Chris Evert has known Madison Keys for a long time. They go way back. Chris Evert has relationships with players through the Everett Academy, so that of course colors the way that she sees tennis and commentates on it. I'm glad that you mentioned this is kind of a coming of age of Sloane, because one thing that I was struck by was the maturity of her play. Not to say anything about her maturity off the court or how she conducted herself, but her composure in matches, the way that she played tennis was mature and professional and shrewd even. Because as I was watching the earlier rounds of the tournament and against Venus, I'm thinking, this is a lot of counterpunching. A less charitable commentator would say pushing even. I'm not going to go that far. But I know that the power that Sloane has, that she possesses, and that she used very sporadically. She was content to grind in a lot of these points. But it turns out that it was working. She knew exactly what to do against Venus. And that's what I mean about the maturity.
It turns out that she has time in spades on a tennis court. Because in spots where players would look rushed, Sloane Stephens looked like she's almost slow.
Mm-hmm. Like she is lightning fast, but doesn't even look it.
No. And that 30-all point at 4-5 in the third set against Venus, you could almost see that backhand up the line coming. Mm-hmm. You just felt it coming. And from that point forward, Venus being 2 points away from the final, and from that point onward, it just got worse for Venus in terms of the trickery and the magic that Sloane Stephens was able to call upon.
She also rushed to the net to retrieve a drop shot, a really well-placed drop shot by Venus, and hit a really nifty volley cross court. I don't remember what point it was on, but that was like, God damn it.
There was also some ball that she just got back, hit a defensive lob that turned into a winner. At that point, you're just like, there's just nothing that can be done.
Yeah. Because in that match against Venus, the first two sets were just kind of bad. Venus was not there in the first set. She upped her game a lot in the second, and Sloane was showing signs of nervousness, but Venus was playing really well. And the momentum was with Venus in that third set, and she was so close, but it's just everything that she did, Sloane had an answer for. And it was the versatility of her game that really struck me in that moment. It was not just retrieving. It was that she could unleash, like you said, that down-the-line backhand when she needed to, with pace.
Venus didn't lose the back end of that third set. You can make the argument that she lost the match at the front end of that third set. That after winning the second set 6-love, there was no way she could have gone down a break right away. That just put her in the back foot one more time in this tournament, like she had against Kvitova, which she was able to overcome. But this time against Stevens, it just wasn't to be. So Sloane gets to the final, where she plays Madison Keys, who is on the back of the match of her life. Because
basically, yeah,
she completely annihilated Coco Vandeweghe. I mean, it was for a match to follow after Venus losing, as we are Venus fans, and we were completely destroyed by that match.
Yeah, absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Completely dispirited. That was some kind of tonic. A little bit of a tonic. So much so that we were contemplating inducting Madison into the Body Serve Hall of Fame. We have an induction coming today.
We do.
But it will not be Madison. Perhaps, if Madison had won the tournament, then maybe we would have. But also, it kind of feels a little bit petty, unnecessarily on our part, to induct another player for beating Coco. Because our first inauguree was...
Magdalena Rybarikova.
Yes, who beat Sloane.
Wow.
Who beat Coco at Wimbledon. But yeah, so it won't be Madison. It'll be somebody else. You'll have to keep listening to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And so Madison gets to this final, and she's the more accomplished player. She's the player who has more weapons, more visible weapons than Sloane. You think, but for what could be a nagging injury that she picked up in the second set of that semifinal, she seemed to be the favorite. To my mind, the almost big favorite.
That's what I thought.
In that final.
I thought she was going to win. I thought it was going to be competitive, but what she showed against Vesnina, then Svitolina, which was one of my highlights of the entire tournament. The match against Svitolina was obviously really tough. She's having an amazing year, and it was such a showcase for Svitolina's athleticism and why she's been so successful this year, and Madison pulled that out. Then, when we get to Colleen, she dominated Colleen, and then as she's beating her thoroughly, goes off court for this medical timeout. And it
up a double break in that second set.
And so when I find out what it's for, and when she comes back on the court and she looks fine, I'm like, oh, wow. This is cunning and smart. She knows she's going to be in the final. She feels she may have picked up a small injury, and she's trying to mitigate that now because she wants to go out and win that final. And so to me, I was like, okay, you know what? Madison's going to win this tournament. That was a professional, if a little, maybe not the most upstanding way of going about it, but I'm like, Madison's going to win. She's looking to the final now.
And of course she didn't. It was the second the second consecutive WTA Slam final where the second set ended in a bagel. Venus was on the receiving end of a 6-4, was it 7-5, 6-love?
I believe so, yeah.
And then at the US Open, it was 6-3, 6-love. Sloane over Madison.
And just not competitive at all.
Sloane made 6 unforced errors the entire match. As much as Madison was unable to find the court and hit the ball over the net, Sloane was just as consistent and good in the ways that aren't immediately visible to the eye.
Right. Like, we don't often see speed as a weapon, but it is. But speed coupled with that sort of consistency and the power when she needs it.
And when you're retrieving so many balls to the point where the point ends with your opponent making an error, that's not always reflective in a positive way for you.
Right, and maybe the stats don't look great overall, right?
But Sloane won that match. And again, in a first-time Slam final, she didn't look for 1 minute to be overcome by nerves. And when it was just such a complete performance on court and then off court. When she's doing her interviews with Tom Rinaldi, we'll get to him later on. This was her moment in time. I think of sports so much through the lens of Whitney Houston's One Moment in Time. And I often wonder what it's like to be that good at something where in that one moment you're racing with destiny and you've achieved and become all that you can be, right? To know what that level of greatness feels like. And that's what Sloane was in that final, on the court and then afterward. Because every note she hit was pitch perfect. Be it a rally ball, a serve, answering a question, being entirely gracious and sweet to Madison, and then giving an A+ champions press conference afterward.
I mean, aside from the tennis, I know we're not supposed to talk about the handshakes and the embraces at the net, but I was moved. I was so pressed that Sloane beat Venus and Madison. I was so moved by the gesture, by their embrace at the net, by their obvious respect and admiration for each other. The fact that Sloane went over and sat with Madison while they were waiting for the trophy presentation.
You know, I had never seen that before. I have never seen that before.
Right. And thank you for Twitter, because they pulled up all the recent times that has happened. Obviously, Venus and Serena always sit next to each other, but Vinci and Panetta and many, many other opponents do that. But there was obviously so much respect between the two. And Madison, you know, she had a really bad day at the office, but she didn't seem like this is going to devastate her in years to come. You know, she didn't have a great day, but she knows that she's talented and that she can get to these opportunities.
So let's put a lid on the women's final.
Okay.
Congrats, Sloane Stephens. Overall, though, the final didn't live up to the general quality of the matches that we saw throughout.
Again, like in Cincinnati, like in Toronto.
Different this time, though, because we had so many top seeds fall by the wayside. But everybody just came and put their hand up to write their own little story this tournament.
Absolutely.
Petra Kvitova.
Wow.
The match of the tournament for me.
Where do you even start with Petra? Coming back from this horrifying injury from the attack in her home, won Birmingham, did, okay in other tournaments, wasn't really winning back-to-back matches very much, but she comes into this US Open looking like her old self, and really like she's never played at the Open before. Her match against Muguruza, I can't remember if we recorded when that happened?
Who cares?
Okay. In the back half of that match, dominated Muguruza, who's the player who has been dictating this summer. And then, like you said, the match against Venus in the quarterfinals was unbelievable. You expect an exciting match from these two, and they really delivered.
They've only ever played 3-set matches. If you recall, back in 2014, third round Wimbledon, they played one of the matches of the year in that tournament, where Venus, at the start of her comeback, after she was depleted by Sjogren syndrome, that was really the first time when you saw Venus play just a stunning level of tennis again. And it was unfortunate that she had to play it in the third round. Now she has a better ranking. She's able to play these matches later on in tournaments, thankfully. But those two, it just seems every time they play, the combination of the quality of their games, their personhoods, everything about the two of them just gel to create magic.
Right. I mean, they bring it against each other. They bring their very best. I was remembering in 2014, Petra made it to the final, won Wimbledon that year in an absolutely dominating performance. And it's like Venus played her into form, right? And we saw Venus lose to the eventual champ here. And I was so worried that she was going to lose to Petra and Petra was going to play into form.
On a personal level, I didn't need to have that ill will toward Petra because I love Petra.
Right.
So for Petra to beat Venus twice on that kind of stage in that kind of way, it would just have been too much. I
mean, it's impossible not to like her, though. She was so complimentary to Venus in what was obviously a heartbreaker for her, because we saw glimpses of peak Petra against Muguruza, and that is a sight to behold, as you all know. But Petra said, Venus can win the tournament in this form, and honestly, I hope she does.
But again, and I can't quote you every instance here, but Venus losing to the eventual champion or somebody who goes really damn far in the tournament. Most recent history, round of 16 in Toronto, losing to Svitolina.
Yeah. I think something positive to take from Venus here, I know a lot of fans are discouraged, but against Sloane, she really didn't have her best game. The serve started to work in the second and third sets, but it wasn't ideal. A lot about her game wasn't working as well as it could have. Her net game just wasn't really... It just wasn't polished like it is sometimes.
Her net game hasn't been polished for years.
Right. But I'm saying that Venus not at her peak was so close. So I think, for me as a fan, I think that Venus has so many more opportunities moving forward. I
don't disagree that she doesn't have more opportunities going forward. I disagree in your read of that situation because toward the middle part of that third set, we started to get 20-plus shot rallies on a regular basis. And that's just not a tenable position for a 37-year-old Venus Williams.
Right.
Not to say that Venus at 37 can't win big tournaments. She could have easily won the Wimbledon final had that 4-5 game gone differently against Muguruza. Who knows what would have happened. At the US Open, on this surface that's playing a little bit slower than some would expect, against your ultimate retriever like Sloane Stephens, and your retriever who has the power to back it up, Wozniacki eat your heart out.
Wow, that's so wicked.
But that's just not the combination that's set up for winning on Venus's part.
Yeah.
To be in a long match, deep in a third set, semifinal, high tension, 37 years old, playing 20-plus rallies, 20-plus shot rallies against somebody like Sloane Stephens where you have to hit 4 or 5 winners.
Yeah. Like, you need to look to end the point, and she was trying to end points. But the problem is with Sloane is she's a retriever whom you cannot hit through. You can't blast her off the court.
Yeah, so it was a bad matchup for Venus in the end, as it turned out, with Sloane having found her best.
Right.
Moving on to the men.
Oh, already?
What else you want to talk about?
I don't know. Well, I guess just shout out some of the amazing things that happened on the women's side.
Okay.
We mentioned Venus-Petra. Petra-Muguruza match was just to watch Petra in full flight is one of the treats of the WTA in the past 10 years, in my opinion.
You've said this already.
Okay.
I'm looking for something new.
How about Sharapova-Sevastova?
That's really what you want to get at here. I can read you like a see-through blanket or something. I don't know how you want to say it. You talked about this on the last podcast. I'm pretty sure this was...
Had it already happened?
I think so,
it did.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I don't really have much more to say. I'm just saying.
We'll talk more about her with this whole unstoppable bullshit.
Okay.
Later on.
On the men's side, how did we find ourselves here? How has Rafael Nadal won major number 16, his 4th on hard courts, 3rd at the US Open? For all the drama about the men's draw, we got a fairly unsurprising champion. The number 1 player in the world.
Well, the drama of the draw was on the bottom half, which didn't have anything to do with Rafa.
But the things that were supposed to happen on the top half didn't.
No. And if you want an answer to that question, the haters, and I suppose the Fed fans, and the Nole family, and...
the Nole family.
They will tell you that Rafa just didn't play anybody ranked inside the top 20 to win this title. And you know what? I am not about that life, because what do you want to do? Do you want to go back through the history of time and check off who played who and how many top 5 seeds? You know, like,
we're not doing that, because Federer has won 9 majors without facing a top 10 opponent.
I didn't even know that.
Right, but we're not going...
But you know that.
But I do know that because I saw it on Twitter. But it's not a useful stat, in my opinion. As a Rafa partisan, right? That's clear. We are biased toward Rafa. It doesn't matter to me whether Federer or anyone has faced top 10, top 20 ranked players. You face who there is, who made it through. And so to me, the criticism that he didn't face any top players, he beat the person who beat Federer.
Yeah. Who himself was not a top 20 player.
But who has won this tournament before. Mm-hmm. But how do you have a leg to stand on if you criticize someone for beating who your favorite player could not beat?
Well, I guess your favorite player then wore him down that much.
Okay.
He was just...
All right, like, yes, I loosened the jar for you before you opened it.
The point is, I'm just not willing to get into this tit-for-tat back and forth of irrationality when it comes to dissecting these results and parsing through to favor your favorite, right? Mm-hmm. Federer wins some, Nole wins some, Rafa wins some. It's the way it is. Like, if to me, it's more of a problem, if there is one, if Rafa limps through to the end, if he's not playing well.
Right.
If he plays just kind of trash tennis, but because he's not playing anybody who can beat him at his worst and push him, he's able to still walk away with the title. Like, that's more of an issue for me. Rafa was playing excellent tennis.
He was.
By the end of this tournament. So, congrats to him.
And to me, it was a lot more impressive than the Roland Garros win, because it's a surface that's less comfortable for him. He was playing more aggressively, which obviously suits the surface more than clay. But the serve was dialed in. We talked on our body serve diary, just plugging that for a moment, about how Rafa was returning from 12 feet behind the baseline, and the commentators were basically laughing at him. And his camp even said after that, we don't want him to return from back there, but that's what he likes. But he was in every single service game against someone who routinely hits 135. So how can you criticize that? He has aggressiveness on the return that helped him win this tournament.
I mean, I don't know how much of the aggressiveness on the return you can gauge when you are hitting from that far back. It's not like he's blasting winners off the return.
No, but against a big hitter, Federer and Nadal alike will often chip.
Yes. So, that's not aggression on the return. That's getting the ball back in play, knowing that against somebody like Kevin, you're able to come from a neutral position off the return, or even a deficit on the return, and still get back and win the point.
Okay. Maybe I misspoke. Not aggression on the first ball.
Okay.
But knowing that if he got it back, he could start to take control in the points.
I also disagree with, this is not like to say you're wrong, but for me, the Roland Garros win was more impressive. Okay. Just because I felt like his level was higher. And maybe it was just a different type of level. I wrote about in that diary today that part of what was impressive about Nadal in this tournament was that he wasn't always playing his most aggressive tennis. He was playing confident, sound, consistent, picking his spots type of tennis. Right? Whereas I felt like he was a lot more aggressive, and maybe it was just more pleasing to watch for me at the French Open than it was at the US Open. Equally impressive, I would say.
And that's interesting, because I would actually say the opposite. I felt, at least in the final, there was no show about his service games, right? You knew he was going to hold serve, and he did so uneventfully, without unnecessary grinding, I felt. I liked the aggression. He went to net 16 times and won all of those points. He's a very accomplished volleyer, which John McEnroe talks about all the time, but I think a lot of people don't realize. And there was just so much working. And even when the forehand wasn't clicking as it should have, there was so many other things to fall back on.
Well, this is what we saw at the French Open. It's something that we talked about in depth after the French Open, about how much he's able to rely now on his backhand to be aggressive in points and not have to rely solely on the forehand to get into offensive positions and winning positions on the court. And so now that he has the serve working, the forehand more or less working, and the backhand as the most reliable shot in his game, it's very difficult for players without the weapons of a Nole at his best or a Federer at his best to break down Nadal in this form.
Right. Have to give props to Kevin Anderson. You and Renee Denfeld on our last show both predicted that he was the one to make it out of that half. And with Sam Querrey's dominating performance against Misha Zverev, I was worried that might not happen.
I think that match happened after Venus Kvitova, if I recall correctly. I think that was the match that followed it. And
I didn't stay up for that one.
That's the Kevin Anderson Sam Querrey match. And that one was entertaining as hell. And Kevin played better than I'd ever seen him play. It's not just that he got through a weakened bottom half. He made the final in DC. He's had a resurgent spring into summer. This is something that was building to this point. And good for him. Really.
Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, he's a super nice guy. Fans talk to him on site at tournaments all the time. And obviously people love his wife, Kelsey. But I was struck by his his general business as usual demeanor throughout the whole tournament. Like, he's just the kind of player who goes out there and does it. He hasn't been to these late stages before, but he's back from injury. He's been a pro for a long time. And in the final, he didn't seem excessively nervous. It's just that he was outplayed.
The thing that impressed me most about him in the final was that, yes, he didn't seem to have the game to beat Rafa.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody expected him to beat Rafa. But that sure as hell didn't stop him from trying.
Right.
Even when he was down that final break in the third set, he was still picking himself up, trying to make inroads on the Rafa serve. This is somebody who, it seemed like he was there to make the most of his opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he or anybody else is thinking that this was his one moment, his one shot at it. He's a little bit older. He's 31. He's 16 days older than Rafa.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps he'll be able to build on this and get there again. Who knows? But he certainly wasn't overwhelmed by the moment. And even when things didn't go his way in that final, he still maintained a positive demeanor and kept coming at Rafa. And so while the scoreline, I think 6-3, 6-3, 6-4, was very one-sided, a straight set final that never seemed in doubt, it was never boring.
I agree, yeah.
It was always, both players played with great intent, and it made for good viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin, in particular, has to be given a lot of credit for that.
And when Chris McKendry asked him that first question, he was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the mic and I'm going to give my speech. And he seized his moment. I enjoyed that both players decided just to monologue instead of answer the interview questions.
I see you have written here another hardcourt major and GOAT debate is reignited. I'm going to veto that.
I do have that written there, but I don't really want to talk about it.
Nor do I.
I just felt like I put it there because people are saying that.
Yeah, we don't need to delve into that.
We'll talk about that in 2027.
Or 2020.
Or 2000 never.
Easy draw, so what? We talked about that a little bit.
We already went over that.
Now, a little note I've made here. Assuming that Murray, Djokovic, Wawrinka, and Nishikori all play the Australian Open, they are all likely to be seeded in the 11 to 25 range. Now think about that for a moment.
Wow.
And as of right now, Monfils is ranked 36.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these players that are going to be outside the top 8 seeds. That's just going to make for one hell of a draw.
Yeah.
If everybody's playing and healthy.
It could mean, what? Third round or round of 16 matchups for the top seeds?
Specifically, Murray will be the lowest ranked.
Really?
Yeah. He has 4,500 points to defend the rest of the season.
He won, 7 titles in the fall last year?
Including the World Tour Finals. And so he's going to be closer around 20, which means he could be a third round opponent for one of the top seeds.
In Australia?
Yeah.
Where he's made the final, 5 times?
A zillion times.
Yeah.
So look out for that. Do you have anything else you want to add about the men's event?
No, I don't think so. We talked about in our Body Serve diary certain players kind of missing an opportunity. Some players will have many, many more opportunities, like Sasha Zverev. Borna Coric took him out, but Borna lost to an accomplished player, but I think he will have more opportunities as well. Someone who won't is Joe Tsonga, who went out very meekly to Denis Shapovalov.
Uh-huh.
And, there's another one.
Will you refrain from picking Joe to win tournaments now?
I can't make any promises. Let's move on to doubles.
Before we get into the doubles, I want to relitigate something from years ago, and it's more prescient, is that the right word? No.
Okay.
Since Sloane is a Grand Slam winner. This whole business of I made you.
Relitigate?
Yeah, because I sent you that article that was circulating today from ESPNW, I think back in 2013, after Miami. Did you read it?
Did I read it, though?
Did you read it?
No.
You did not read it.
No.
Okay. Sloane, I'd forgotten a lot of the nitty-gritty of that story. But Sloane was really hurt by that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of people talking about it since. And we were DMing with our listener Fabian today. And we were talking about that a little bit. And I honestly don't wrong Sloane for feeling wronged in that moment.
Okay.
And why should we overlook the fact that we know Serena back then in particular to be a petty person?
Okay.
Like, she can be great, she can be the GOAT, she can be your fave, and she can also do really kind of petty, shady things that are not necessarily nice, that we can understand and see why she'd want to keep Sloane at a distance. But if what Sloane is saying is to be believed, well, it's not really the best look.
Okay. Are you asking for my opinion?
Yes, I'm asking for your opinion.
I think there's no doubt that Serena can be mean. And she may have been mean in that instance.
I didn't say mean, I said petty.
Okay, but there can be a mean-spirited aspect to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the I made you tweet, I do feel like was, even at the time I felt like, okay, maybe that's a little too much. Clearly, Serena and Sloane don't have to be friends. I think they can have a healthy respect for each other and not be friends. I don't know all that went on between them, right? I remember seeing their snaps at the Olympics, and they all seemed to be getting along on the team. Venus, Madison, Sloane, and Serena, they were interacting in a friendly way. There's no doubt that Sloane was hurt by that. Maybe she expected to come on the scene and have Serena as a mentor. And Serena wasn't willing to fulfill that.
It seemed, based on what Sloane was saying, and if you had read the piece, she was sitting there at the pizza place with her mother and the journalist talking about it. And the mother was like, are you really going to be talking about all this stuff right now? And Sloane was just letting loose. She was like, yes, you know what, I'm going to talk about it because I'm really damn pissed about this.
Well, this is what she does when she gets comfortable.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know that Serena had a mentor relationship with Sloane.
No.
I don't know that Sloane perceived it to be a mentor relationship.
But did she want it?
I don't think that's the thing to be looking at either.
Okay.
I think it's how it was framed. I remember Serena being asked about it in press. I remember Sloane being asked about it in press. And Sloane, after having a cordial and friendly relationship with Serena, kind of went with it. You know, thinking like, well, yeah, why not? And then Sloane beats Serena, and Serena is drawing back.
Right.
And Sloane can't understand that. And then wrapped up in that, too, is this media narrative of getting the next Serena. And is Sloane the next Serena? And at that point, too, Sloane is battling this duality of maintaining that relationship with Serena, which Serena then distances herself from her, and then also not wanting any part of being the next Serena. And she even says in that piece, you know, like, I never even said Serena was my favorite player. I said from the start that Kim Clijsters was my favorite player.
Right.
You know, but the media ran with it. And it's lazy to the extent that you're saying she's the next Serena because she's black as well. Yeah. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. And
at 20 years old, did Sloane handle that as best she could? Absolutely not. Like, it probably would have been best to let that be.
But there's a big but.
To the extent that in that article, too, she went off saying that when she was really young, she went to this practice or this tournament where the Williams sisters were, and she and her mother waited for hours for them to sign. And they came back and forth 3 different times and they didn't. And then she said, from that point, I was just done. You know, Kim's my favorite player anyway, like, whatever.
Well, and you can see Kim all over her game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you tell that story, in the immediate aftermath of that whole I made you and all that crap that went down, it doesn't necessarily paint Sloane in the best light with the Williams fans, right? And that's where I think a lot of that snowballed out of control. This is me defending Sloane now. As to why I'm doing that, I don't know. It was just something that as an intellectually curious person, it stuck out for me today. What's curious for me now, with Sloane on the cover of Sports Illustrated, with Sloane now a Grand Slam champion, with Sloane getting press and visibility like she's never had before, is she now going to continue to push back and distance herself from being the next Serena? Or is she going to fall into the trappings of the notoriety and the money and the press that engaging in that will benefit her?
No,
Do you know what I'm saying?
No. Because I think now the pushing back against being, the next Serena has moved on. It's not resentment anymore. It's about, I want to be the next Sloane Stephens. It's not about, I just don't want to be Serena because she was nasty to me. She's different. She's older. She's had all these experiences since that happened. That was, 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I think that Sloane and Serena, we don't know them. Maybe they've come to this peace between themselves. We have no idea.
Serena tweeted in support of both
exactly.
Sloane and Madison before the final.
So for me, the analogy that I thought of immediately, and when this all went down a few years ago, was Joan Rivers, who always said, so Joan Rivers was almost 80 years old and still out there writing new jokes, competing with male and female comics to get bookings, right? Like, she was doing the work as an old lady. She always said when female comics came up to her and said, "You're such an inspiration," it pissed her off. And she said, "How dare you? I'm competing against you. Like, you're my competition. I don't care if you're my, I'm your inspiration." So this is what I thought of with the Sloane and Serena thing. Serena is out here trying to beat these other women. Sloane beat her on a huge stage, and that stung really badly. So did she react in a way that was, I don't know, unbecoming, petty? Maybe. But I think that they have moved on, and we should move on as well. I think Sloane, the thing that really bugged me this weekend was hearing one of the commentators say that, look, you can come from nothing and become a Grand Slam champion. And I'm thinking, excuse me? Are you saying that because Sloane is black?
Chris Evert is who you're referring to.
Do you think that she came from nothing because she's black? I mean, her father played in the NFL. Her mother was an all-American college athlete. Like, that is so offensive and racist, that assumption. And so, to me, the assumption that two black female athletes should be best friends is also offensive in a similar way.
That's not what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Two final points I want to make. I don't think that Serena is the same person she was back then. We've seen a tremendous, it's kind of demeaning to say maturity, but a shift, an evolving of Serena Williams in the last couple of years. She's embraced her role as inspiration, as mentor to young Americans, as a racial figure, as the GOAT, as the GOAT that's still playing. She's able to occupy that space with much more grace, so to speak, than she did back then. But also, it's not just about whether Sloane wants to take part in this whole next Serena business. It's about being able to navigate the media whirlwind of comparisons that's inevitable to still come her way, especially if she continues to win. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and that will come. I mean, there will be forces trying to crown her the next Williams sister. And the thing is, take away all of the individual people involved in this. There's no reason that Sloane should be the next Williams sister or feel that she needs to be. She's Sloane Stephens. She's an American tennis player who's playing really well right now. So I think, her reactions to those forces are sort of besides the point, because how can anyone be equipped to deal with that kind of thing, regardless of age,
It's just something that's never going to go away. We know how the tennis media is like a dog without a bone, a dog with a bone. Not just the tennis media, but the media in general. When you win, you become a slam champion. You go on, you do Kelly and Michael, which she did. You go and do Seacrest, all these different people who aren't in tennis day in, day out. They're the ones who then make those bigger extrapolations as well. It's just something I'm going to be curious to see, given that it's something that she's pushed back against all along.
Okay.
That's all.
All right.
Back to the doubles.
So Martina Hingis.
God.
Martina Hingis won women's doubles and mixed doubles. She has 25 Grand Slam titles now. I think, 13 women's doubles titles and like 7 mixed. A lot.
She won doubles with Letitia Chen after splitting with Sania Mirza, Santina, that doubles grouping, just before Cincinnati last year. She kind of flailed around a little bit, played with Coco for a bit, played with a couple other people, and now, since the Chen sisters split at the end of last year, she's taken up with Letitia, and they've had an awesome year, and it's now culminated with the US Open title. And then she goes and she partners with Jamie Murray again. Jamie Murray, who she played with at Wimbledon, to win mixed at both events. My question to you is, and it's something I posed on Twitter, and I got a couple of responses. For those 2 titles, Martina won $412,500 combined. And I just don't think that that's enough. Not when Sloane Stephens and Rafa Nadal are out here cashing $3.7 million checks. There's a legitimate argument to be made that doubles is undervalued. And it's something that Venus talks about all the time. You ask Venus any day of the week, what's one change you'll make to tennis? And she'll tell you every time that people need to pay more attention to doubles.
Really?
Yeah.
She said that?
Yeah, she has. And many people feel that way. You know, Martina Hingis is a big name. She's bringing visibility to doubles. She's out here as the best doubles player in the world. And we saw in Cincinnati that people are watching doubles.
Yes.
You know, we aren't able to get doubles on TV a lot, so the visibility is suppressed to an extent. But when people are at tennis tournaments, they are watching doubles matches. More so than a lot of these no-name singles matches and early round matches. And you know, I'm sure to an extent, some of these doubles matches draw bigger crowds than even some men's or women's 4th round single matches on outer courts.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you kind of hit it with, it's not often on TV. That's the thing. It's undervalued because it doesn't bring eyeballs to TV, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because it's not on TV that often. And so organizers can say, well, it's not, you know, we're not selling tickets based on doubles. People are not tuning in for doubles, but they've kind of made their bed. You know what I mean? As far as the US Open, $3.7 million for a singles winner is absurd. But the unique situation at the US Open is that they like to brag about the check. That's a routine at every singles final. So they have to keep upping the ante with the singles purse. And I think what suffers is the other draws, right? The doubles and mixed doubles. Not
only that, but the first and second round prize monies as well. And the qualifying prize monies in singles. There are so many ways in which the wealth could be spread that it's not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Somebody said to me, oh, you know, I'm not here to feel sorry about somebody winning $412,000. Like, that's not enough money.
No, I mean, that's a lot of money. That's more money.
That's entirely besides the point.
That's more money than we have, but it's about scale, right? It's about proportion.
And the argument that you make, too, that it's a lot of money for doubles, we only have that perspective because, as you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't put the time money investment into developing doubles, then it's not going to get any better. It's not going to become more visible. There's no reason why doubles shouldn't have a better value in relation to singles than it does right now. And you can start by rewarding people with prize money to get better players to play doubles more regularly. A couple notes. The 2 junior winners. We have Anisova, who won the girls singles at the US Open, and then Wu Yibing, who won the boys singles. He also won the boys doubles as well. He's the first Chinese junior titleist in history.
Really?
And he becomes...
Men or women?
Yeah,
or girls
he becomes
or
somebody to really watch going forward.
Mm-hmm. Because we've seen a lot of great Chinese women's players, but not a lot of great men. Is it time for the Body Surf Hall of Fame induction ceremony yet?
Yes.
Okay. We actually changed our mind on this one. Would you like to announce the winner?
It's not a winner.
The inductee?
We are inducting this person, a player who was one of my original faves in tennis back when I started in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
And this person has had 2 separate careers on the WTA. And today, at the age of 46, announced her retirement, sadly after losing Love and Love to Alexandra Krunic in Japan. It seemed like this was planned,
Mm-hmm.
that Kimiko Date Crum started Kimiko Date, married Michael Crum, became Kimiko Date Crum, divorced, now Kimiko Date again.
Oh, I missed that part.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, she's calling it quits. She's been off the tour for well over a year because of a crazy injury. Decided to make it back to have this final moment on home soil, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible, again, that it was a Love and Love loss.
Right.
But Kimiko, you are a champ. You are a fave of ours. You provided many thrills. In your second career, you pushed Venus deep into a 3rd set at Wimbledon.
Right. She was beating women half her age. I mean, she's, like you said, she had 2 careers. I feel like she's had 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's had big layoffs since the original comeback. She reached her first Grand Slam semifinal in 1994. Were y'all born in 1994?
She was playing on the WTA tour in the late 80s.
What? Really?
Yeah, she's been
When we were in kindergarten?
she's been on tour on and off for practically 30 years.
Mm-hmm. So
Think about that.
Pre-Nishikori, she was Japan's most successful tennis player ever, and is still obviously greatly honored and admired in Japan.
She started a cafe, a pastry shop
Mm-hmm.
that hopefully she'll be able to turn into a franchising business. We'll see some in Canada sometime soon.
Yeah, they'll probably start in Vancouver and then move their way over here.
That's racist.
No, it's just the market.
Because there's a lot of Asians in Vancouver.
Specifically Japanese.
Okay.
Yes, that's just true. That's not racist.
Okay. Do you have anything you wanted to say about Kimiko specifically?
I want to say, I mean, like, what can you say? It's impressive that she was still out here, but she was playing good tennis. It's not like she was just getting wild cards on a protected ranking or something. She was out here beating people who she had no business beating, playing a style of tennis that nobody plays anymore. So it'll be sad to see her go. I did want to say that if you get a chance, watch Alexandra Krunic's speech after the match. Just absolute class all around. Said it was such a great honor to play Kimiko and that she was so sorry that she was the one who had to send her out of the game and that she'd probably be crying in the locker room afterward. I mean, Krunic would be crying.
And meanwhile, Kimiko was just there smiling, beaming while she was speaking.
I mean, if you're Kimiko Date, like, how are you not proud of your career at this point?
Such an inspiration to me and so many others. And while, I mean, obviously we're fans of Rafa and the Williams sisters, we haven't inducted them yet. We don't really know what the hell we're doing with this Body Serve Hall of Fame.
I mean, those are too obvious, right?
We were petty with the first induction. This one is more heartfelt and heartwarming. Somebody that we absolutely love and respect.
Yeah.
And has been a big inspiration to us as well. And welcome to our Hall of Fame, Kimiko.
Arigato.
A couple note-keeping things before we get into our final segment, which will, I guess, be a see what happened was with Sharapova and more bullshit.
Is it really all of that, though?
There's still some more stuff to say.
All right.
Rankings. Some interesting stuff with the rankings after the US Open. Nadal, of course, is still number 1. He has a 1,900-point lead over Federer for number 2. And so year in number 1 is a distinct possibility for Rafa this year.
It is still very much in play, though.
It is. Yeah, because Federer loves this part of the season as well.
He did say he's going to play Paris, which I wasn't sure about. He's going to play Paris, Basel, I think Shanghai. I could be wrong, but I think he's playing 4 more tournaments.
Alexander Zverev is up to number 4, a career high. Novak is down to number 6. Part of a progressive slide for him for the rest of the year.
Which he can't do much about at this point.
Carreño Busta, he's up to number 10, cracks the top 10 for the first time in his career after making the semifinals. We hadn't mentioned him prior, but congrats to him. Kevin Anderson, the finalist, he's up to number 15, a previous career high of number 10, so he's making his way back. Gael Monfils, number 36.
That just does not feel right.
It's crazy.
In my spirit.
He made a semifinal last year. That was a crazy...
Yeah, at the US Open.
That was a semifinal against Djokovic where he did all those crazy things, right?
Was that a semi?
I think it was, yeah.
Oh my God.
Because remember, he played so well in the summer last year as well. That's why he's lost all these points. We saw him a bunch at the Rogers Cup in Toronto. He won DC, I think.
Yes, you're right.
Denis Shapovalov, he is up to number 51 after making the 4th round at the US Open.
What a rise. If Sloane had not done so well, he would have been, the other story of the summer.
Well, they're linked together as well because they have this love fest going on.
Like, the funniest story I've heard in a long time is Sloane thinking she saw Dennis and his family at a restaurant and sending wine to the table, and it wasn't actually them.
Note to Sloane, not all white people look alike.
Also, Dennis is too young to drink wine.
It was champagne.
Okay.
Muguruza is your new world number 1 in the WTA, joining Rafa as joint Spanish number 1s. That's pretty cool for España.
It sure is. Felicidades. And it feels right. I think Muguruza is someone who will wear the mantle well.
That's very coded.
No, I don't think it is. I knew how that could be taken. But, like we've said before, Muguruza is somebody who is pretty fearsome when she's at her best, and she's been at her best a lot recently.
We will see how she wears that crown.
I'm just saying it feels right based on her results.
Okay, if you leave it at that, that's perfect.
All right, that's what I meant.
Venus is up to number 5, the highest she's been ranked since January 2011. Which in effect is the end of year 2010. You can basically say 2010 because, the year ends and then you carry that ranking into 2011. So I think it's more impressive to say since 2010. In 7 years, her highest ranking in 7 years. Ostapenko cracks the top 10 for the first time. She's up to number 10. Angelique Kerber down to number 14 after losing in the first round at the US Open. So her horror year is now fully in her rearview mirror now.
Yeah.
Hopefully she can right the ship and start building again. Because, we've heard and seen and ourselves, we've categorized her year as pretty much a colossal failure, right? And yet she's still number 14. So that is a positive to take.
Unfortunately, her year last year was just so incredible that there are a lot of points that have to come off.
Sloane Stephens, champion at the US Open, is up to number 17. She's jumped over 900 spots in the last month. 900.
No big deal. Does that mean she's comeback player of the year?
She has to be.
Is there any competition for that?
She has to be. Back-to-back semifinals in, what was it? Toronto and Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And then winning the US Open. You do you, girl.
That's pretty good. Serena
Williams is down to number 22. She has no more points to defend the rest of the year. So this is where she will be pretty much at the Australian Open if she comes back.
Okay.
Meaning there are players below her who could possibly still overtake her and players above her who could still lose points the rest of the year. I would say within 5 places, I just don't see her dropping out of the top 30. She'll be seated at the Australian Open if she plays.
Really?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I don't really know how all that works.
Okay.
So
that said, if Serena doesn't come back at the Australian Open, then she will be unseated.
So it'll be a protected ranking.
Yes.
But she won't be seeded?
Correct.
Okay.
Jennifer Brady's up to number 65. Maria Sharapova. She's up to number 103 after making the 4th round at the US Open, which I'm told, as of right now, would be good enough to get her into the Australian Open without a goddamn wild card.
Please.
We
just let it
assume-
happen. Just
we assume-
play one match in the fall.
We assume, unless she picks up an injury while she's signing some books, that she'll be playing the rest of the year. So she'll be able to build on that even more.
Or like if she falls off that really high stool at Regis and Kelly, or Michael and Kelly, or whatever it's
you
called now.
behave yourself. Sad for me, a personal fave, Andrea Petkovic. She's down to 105, number 105. Kai Kanepi, quarterfinalist, surprise quarterfinalist at the US Open. She jumps 308 spots to number 110.
308 spots.
308
That's all?
spots. Who jumps even more spots this week is Vera Zvonareva, who made the final in Dalian, which is a Chinese $125,000 tournament. A tournament that's been won previously by Kristina Pliskova. She jumps 317 spots to number 306. So she's well on her way back, it seems.
Well, I'm all for that.
2 more odds and ends before we get into the Maria business. Alicia Black, you may remember her as one half of the Black Sisters, Tornado and Hurricane Black.
Yeah.
They were big-time newsmakers in juniors a couple years back. And lo and behold, this week, a New York Times article gets published documenting Alicia, who also is known as Tornado, her struggles, her need for a surgery to make it back to tennis, the fact that her family is struggling, she has to be giving lessons on the weekend and during the week to pay for rent just to put a roof over her mother who has cancer and her younger sister's head.
Yeah. So she's basically a teaching pro to help support her sister's junior career and just pay the bills.
Yeah, and her career is on hold. She needs a $40,000 surgery that includes the cost of recovery and whatnot and not being able to, be the breadwinner or what have you.
Yeah.
Supposedly, the surgery can be done in Florida where she's based, but it's not been done very often. And the person who is best in the field to be doing it is out in California. And so she doesn't want to pay for a budget surgery that she doesn't know which, I mean, as a professional athlete, this is a step that you need to be taking. You can't make those kind of Walmart decisions.
To be discount shopping for your surgeon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so
of course, she has private health insurance, which will not cover it. So, I mean, it's just terrible shit. It's the total moral failure of the American healthcare system and the injustice of it. So, anyway, she started a GoFundMe or Kickstarter, whatever. We've been sharing it on Twitter. If you're able, and not everyone is able to give, please do so. But if not, just share it. Kick it around tennis Twitter. Tennis Twitter is so generous and so supportive. So I hope she gets to her goal.
Tom Rinaldi. I have here #sachet away. He's interviewing. All of a sudden, Tom Rinaldi is doing tennis.
How did he get the job, like the on-court job?
Why is he there? Oh,
why? What else does he do?
He's done many, many, many sports.
Oh, I only know him
before.
from tennis.
Really?
Well, I mean, I don't watch other sports.
You mean from tennis this year?
No, I mean, like,
You've heard of him
he's been
before.
at the U.S. Open for a long time.
Oh, he
Hasn't
has?
he?
I don't know. I just noticed him for the first time this year. In such a large presence.
Yeah, it was definitely an outsized presence.
I've seen him before doing those color commentary kind of vignettes.
Yes.
Like he's done those before.
Because I recognize his voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now he's on court interviewing winners and doing the women's final interview with Sloane and Madison. And mind you, if I am Tom Rinaldi and in that semifinal I said to Madison Keys as she was standing right beside me and announced to the crowd, Sloane Stephens into the US Open final. And Madison Keys just hangs her head and walks away.
But she didn't really indicate that she knew it. Like, it was a really professional response.
Yeah. But that's besides the point.
Of course,
the point,
yeah.
it was a colossal fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you have 3 black women in the semifinals, and it's that difficult to tell them apart.
Sorry, which black girl are you again? Can you remind me?
And so we know, because Chris McKendry did the men's final, that Tom didn't have to do the women's final. After that big fuck up, they could have just said, you know what, Tom? You go interview Rafa after he wins, and Chris, you go do the women, right? Because we don't need that situation again.
Yeah.
And there he is, with Madison and Sloane in the final.
And luckily, Sloane did the work for him. I mean, she gave an emotional, just a wonderful interview. And so did Madison. But I actually really liked Chris McKendry. I know people were joking that she was speaking very slowly. And,
she was.
Well, she was. But Bad Toss from Twitter pointed out that it was perfect for the venue because it's very echoey, and her husband's a sound engineer, by the way. That's how these things occur to her. So that was a good point that I didn't even think of. But I just, honestly, I like Chris McKendry because she's a pro. You need a broadcaster in the booth at all times. Even if her tennis knowledge doesn't run deep, you just need a professional. And that's what she is. She did a good job.
I agree to the extent that it was still off-putting watching it in real time. It just came off as weird. I'm not going to apologize for that. Her questions were good. She did a good job. But the combination of the slowness, the kind of loopy smile that she had on her face, it just seemed a little bit...
I mean, she looked great.
She did, but it looked a bit drug-induced. That's all.
Fair enough. I mean, maybe all of us just need something to get through. Like, no judgment. I will say, her professionalism shone through when both Rafa and Kevin kind of took over the mic and probably answered a lot of the questions that she had prepared. And she reacted without missing a beat. That's why you need a professional broadcaster there.
And still followed up with questions that were not touched upon in their responses.
And not Dick Enberg, who steals the mic away from Del Potro and says, sorry, you can't talk in Spanish, even though you won this huge title.
Oh my God. I'm crushing up my agenda right now.
What? Nobody wants to hear that.
I'm making the noise. Do you hear it? It's being crushed.
Yeah, everyone's turning down their speakers right now.
I just threw it on the ground. I am now fully unencumbered for us to talk about this Maria shit now.
My spirit is not unencumbered. It's very much cumbered.
It seems like every week we say, oh, we're not going to be talking about Maria anymore. We're so done with this. And then some fresh bullshit happens, right? We knew that Unstoppable was coming out.
I told y'all about the chapter.
We knew that the chapter was coming. And, Max, I don't know his Twitter handle, but Max...
MG loves tennis.
Yeah, the 15-year-old in Canada. I've met him a couple times. He got the book early in Canada. Because the release dates are different.
Really?
It is.
It came out in Canada first?
It came out in Canada first. So he was taking snaps.
I thought he was like in the loop or something.
No, he took snaps of certain segments of the book, chapters, whatever, put them on Twitter. And there are all these these people who are showing their asses coming for this kid on Twitter, really. It's like, honestly, like if you don't want to read it, don't read it. If you feel offended by this, block him. I just don't understand.
Twitter has several mechanisms for that, if you're not aware.
There were a couple of people who, let's be frank, it wasn't surprising that they handled this situation in this manner.
Wow, you're really going down that road right now?
Whatever. I mean, I don't care. What do I care? I mean, it's just not a good look. I mean, what? Whatever.
Anyway, that's not really what we're here to talk about. The book is out.
So anyway, that was part of how this Maria stuff became circulated.
Of course people are going to get the book.
There's also press people who get the book ahead of time and do reviews and
post excerpts or whatever.
And one of the things that came to pass was Maria talking about Serena in the Serena chapter. And the first time she saw her or played her, I think at Wimbledon in 2004, talking about her thick arms and her thick thighs and her thick butt and her thick nose and her thick hair.
She did not say the nose and the hair. Come on. It was bad, but it could have been worse.
She describes Serena as an ogre in essence, and she being this dainty, innocent little girl. Oh my goodness.
No, in all seriousness, this is what has pissed a lot of people off and has really taken off even in mainstream media that rarely pays attention to this kind of stuff. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on Sharapova because she did not win the US Open. She did not get to the quarterfinals. And
she did not break the top 100.
No, and I don't know if it's worth our breath. And I think that a lot of people are doing a lot of great work in exposing and what this sort of language means. But what needs to be said is that this is a historical project, a historical American project to make black women seem like monsters, seem unhuman, animalistic. And it's just part of this history, a way of positioning Sharapova as a white, pretty, skinny woman as innocent and as intimidated by a black woman who is somehow more than human and less than human in her physicality. And I will not stand for it. I'm pissed off.
Which then
it's racist.
It posits in opposition Sharapova as a damsel in distress, the one who's constantly in danger, in fear of her life. She's in fear of her tennis life on court because this beast is coming to just stomp all over her, and somehow she's able to rise above it and win. I don't know how she did it in the face of all
those
that.
2 times.
And yes, we know that there is a long history of this dating back in professional sport writing and in American culture to the 19th century in popular discourse.
To slavery.
Yes, it starts there.
The 17th century.
But in terms of how this translates to sport, right? And this is not new. By any measure, this is not new. And to say that that's not her intent, for her to say that's not her intent, it's neither here nor there.
That does not
it's
matter.
meaningless. It's the same reason why, for example, the body image business of the New York Times article, like the intent of that didn't matter. The intent of someone's racism doesn't matter. Right?
Right.
Like, the business is to be aware of why you should or shouldn't be doing this thing. And Maria didn't just write this thing. Well, first she didn't write it by herself.
Right.
But she and her ghost editor or whatever, ghost writer, didn't just write it and then sent it to UPS and printed it and circulated it all over the world. Like, there was an editor. It went through many meetings. It went through all these things. Like, this is not an accident.
Of course.
It's one of two things. Either it was totally missed by everybody as something that could be problematic, which I find hard to believe.
The missed by it. What was missed? I mean,
the language.
But they know it's going to sell.
That's
books.
my point.
That's all that matters.
My point.
That's it.
The second point is that it was seen and left in intentionally because this is what she is.
Right.
At the heart of it too, right? She's somebody who is there to sell product. And this type of writing, this salacious writing, is left in to then elicit this kind of response to then sell the book.
Well, of course, we're talking about the book, right? It, you know what really pisses me off is the fact that she would bring up the potentiality of being friends with Serena. And she said, on paper, we should be friends. We've experienced a lot of the same things. We have things in common. Not many people in history have reached the heights that we have. And there's some truth to that. But she also says we will likely never be friends. And what's implied in that
is that mean, evil bitch will never allow it.
Well, of course. That either that there's some imaginary force preventing us from being friends, even though I want it to happen. Or it's Serena. Regardless. The idea that Maria desires to be friends is laughable because she would never write about her in that way if she wanted that to come to pass after their careers are over.
Exactly. And she's also said in some of the excerpts that we've seen that she's actively, from a junior level, from a child, gone out of her way to not befriend tennis players.
Right.
That's
But-
part of her
and-
MO to develop this persona as somebody who is unavailable to other tennis
Yeah.
players to maintain that aura of fear and
Right.
intimidation.
Which is her prerogative,
Yes.
of course.
But this is that duality that we're seeing with her. This complete bullshit where you say one thing and we know the opposite to be true.
I was amused by the obsession with Venus and Serena from a very young age.
Yeah.
And it can only be called an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Yuri put her in a shed to watch the Williams sisters practice
Because she...
so they couldn't be seen. Like, at that time, like, anyone would have cared who this little skinny blonde girl is. Nobody knew who she was. What if Serena and Venus saw her? She would just be part of the sea of onlookers
Right.
at that time when they were children, right?
Like, oh my God, in 2004, Serena arrives on Center Court Wimbledon. And it's like, oh my God, that's the girl who was watching me. When I was
In Bradenton.
when I was 10 years
in
old, that's
1994. You know, like,
If only
Oh my God.
I hadn't allowed her to watch me that day, I wouldn't have lost this match.
oh my God.
And then she talks about at the Wimbledon
and
ball.
she says, I have to beat them.
Yeah.
At every turn,
Yeah.
every time
At
she
the-
spotted them.
At the Wimbledon ball, she describes everybody standing to give Serena the ovation. I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
It's like, no, you were fucking rude.
Right? Like, this is not some suspense or drama that you're adding to the prose. That's just real fucking disrespectful. I mean, we've talked about this before as well. The whole idea, the nerve. And please, there's a Dear Maria letter that was written by Lovey.
Mm-hmm.
I think her name is Awesomely Lovey on Twitter.
Yeah.
And you can, I think it's just at LUVVY or something like that, or LUVVIE. She wrote something to Maria, and it was, one, it was hilarious. Two, it expresses so much of what so many of us feel. There are a lot of parts that maybe go too far,
Okay.
you know, but whatever. Thank you, Lovey, for giving us this one little bit where she references Sharapova's beckery and caucasity. Because we talked about the title of this book. That is the utmost ridiculousness. Unstoppable, My Life So Far, when in fact you dedicate an entire chapter to Serena Williams, whom you have not beaten since 2004. 17 straight losses. You are 2-19. You are by definition very stoppable by Serena Williams. But to work and undercut that truth, you then talk about all the ways in which you are not responsible for you being stoppable by Serena Williams.
That sounds so familiar.
Right?
Doesn't it?
You say that Serena, I know for a fact that the reason why Serena resolved to never lose to me again, because she was there in the locker room heaving, and I mean, it was a type of dry
She said
heaving,
guttural,
wailing, guttural
sobs.
like, you know, your life is over kind of screaming, sobbing. But she knew I was there, and she knew that I heard her, and she would never let that go. And that's why 17 other times that I lost to her.
She's summoned Jehovah to beat you.
Right.
It can't be that she's better.
Not that.
That's not a possibility, right?
Not the fact that you tried your damnedest to win but couldn't. Right?
If indeed that did happen in the locker room, how dare you reveal that
Right?
about another player?
Somebody tweeted, you know, if I were to hear another woman in that private moment, that would go to me with my grave. Right? That's real fucking rude. To be out here in this book, selling that book for money and throwing Serena's private moment under the bus.
But if you're not friends after your careers, it's Serena's fault, obviously, after all this. So, you know what? Listen, you got me all worked up, girl. And before I say something I regret, I'm going to just exit.
You're going to exit?
Yeah, I'm just going to take myself out of this conversation.
This is a tip.
What I really, really want people to take from this discussion, though, is that regardless of intent, that this construction has to be situated in a history of racism in this country, of pitting white women and black women against each other. And it's incredibly frustrating And I don't know that Maria, as an immigrant, even understands what she's doing. But I just will not stand for the continued dehumanization of black women. It just really pisses me off. And that's why I do not want to give a cent to this book, and I will pirate it if necessary.
If necessary.
So that's all I have to say about that.
We've been a little bit long-winded. This is the end of the episode. Congrats to Rafa, congrats to Sloane, congrats to Kimiko on a wonderful career. My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
And I'm James. I'm at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. The podcast is at The Body Serve on Twitter. You can find other Body Serve related works on thebodyserve.com, specifically the Body Serve Diary, of which there's new content for you to peruse. Please give us a review on iTunes. Those are always welcomed. Till next time.